Hey friends, welcome back to another edition of the Marketing Box podcast. And today for our Entrepreneur Spotlight, we have a couple of special guests. We have Paige Henderson and Nikki from Bellus Photography. What's going on, ladies?
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited about today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Paige, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and a little bit about Bellus Photography, and then we're going to try to jump in and figure out how did you get here, and because you've started the business a few years ago, right?
A few years ago, about 7 years ago. It all started with most photographers. We started taking pictures of our children. It started a little further back for me as I was documenting our high school back in the 80s, the days of film. And I would go out and create stories based on magazine layouts from Glamour or Mademoiselle or Vogue. And so I would copy them, and then I would go shoot the photos for my layout. And it's actually how I met my husband, because I was photographing the JV football team as they were leaving. And he kind of waved at the camera and went like, "Hey, we're number one." I was like, click. He went in the yearbook. So
Way to get in the yearbook.
the story picture tells it's worth 1,000 words, they say. And so, yeah, that was the start of that. But, yeah, I was always documenting and looking for beautiful and kind of always in the shadows and lurking back, watching people and creating like, wow, their story's really unique. Although most people wouldn't say that their own story is unique. It became a passion.
Yeah. Well, I met you because our boys played ball together, right? And so I saw you out on the field, and I'm like, who's this lady that's out here, man? She's out here, got this big camera equipment. She's kind of elbowing her way in, and and she's the only kind of woman there. And I'm like, what's going on with her? So this is just always something. And I actually talked to your boys prior to this interview, and they sent me a couple of pictures. It looks like even back in their Little League days, this is like you were the camera person. Like that's what they all kind of said, is that my mom was the one that everybody just knew was going to be taking the pictures.
Yeah, always. It's a passion because selfishly it allows me to be on the field. And so I can hear the coaches talking, I can hear the stories, everything that goes into even these Little League games. These kids play with a lot of passion and a lot of heart. You've got the dads on the sidelines, and everybody's fired up to be there. And some of these kids will never go on. This may be their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so here they have, like, hey, here was me. And so it was always trying to create a portrait in the action of some kid looking like he could have been on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine. So
yeah, so how that's always been interesting to me, because you out there taking like still action stuff, but also the still things. It seems like it's two totally different things to become a good action photographer, because some of the shots that you got at the football game are incredible, but then we go to your studio and you have this beautiful studio and you make these kind of still pictures come alive and people's families come alive. So those are two totally different things, though, I would imagine.
Well, I would call, you have the big action of a sports, a guy making a diving catch in the end zone, or you have the micro movements of your face, so capturing, so it's all action. So a little squint that you do to the camera that's natural, or the way you smile. I may catch you on the upside of an emotion, boom, that's action. So it's trying to combine the two and finding the little niches, because if I catch you on the upside of a smile where you're like about to explode with emotion, it's the same as if I catch you on the downside, your mouth is turned down, you're not as like boom. It's same thing. I can take a shot of a guy diving into an end zone and the ball might be in his hands in that shot. Well, the ball's on the ground in the next shot. So I would take that shot out and just show this heroic catch, because no one's ever going to know that it wasn't a catch. So the same thing in a headshot or a portrait is catching that emotion. So it's almost like a micro expression.
Wow. So there's a specific thing that you're looking for that person to do.
Yep.
And are you usually the one that's making the decision? Like, because I don't have any idea like how to even look and see whether it's the right one or not. Like, how do you know if it's the right one? Is it just a feel?
It's a feeling, and I know what I like, but I do give the client the choice to choose, because they'll see something and go, I like this one. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that's not the one I would have chosen. Mm-hmm. But depending on the story that they want to tell, which is all they are, is there's a photographer who calls a still photo like a moving picture of one frame. So you get the one frame to tell the story. And so if they see the photo and say, that's what I wanted, then I have to say, okay.
Yeah, but it's maybe
I'll usually
not the
send
best.
the other one too. Like,
Right.
You need both.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing I find fascinating is I look at your family. So you have 4 children, right?
Yes.
all like incredibly high achievers, like super successful. I think your oldest son is in the finance world. I think your daughter's is in law school. Law school, and then Jack is going to playing football at a Power 5 conference, and Rex is in a path to go play wherever in baseball.
Yeah.
So raising these kids, you know, you've raised these 4 really competitive, super successful young people. You know, in today's world, and I've met all your kids. Your kids are just really fine young people, man. Very respectful, very polished. They're free. They think. You know, you can tell they really understand where they're going in life. So that's a testament to you and Steve. But what were some of the things that you were kind of the housewife for?
I was a stay-at-home mom.
Stay-at-home mom, right?
Better part of 20 years.
Yeah.
I would say presence. You know, being there, listening. Helping them along the way, and knowing their natural gifts. My oldest, his 7-year-old birthday cake was a $. He's always been into money. He used to ask me, "Why do you only have 1 degree, Mom?" Condoleezza Rice has 7 master's degrees, and he was very education oriented. So very young, if he had come to me and said, "I think I'm going to be a cartoonist," I'd say, "Wow, your gifts seem to be more this way." And so just kind of finding where they are. And with the sports, you can't make your kid a football player. You can't say, "Wow, I really wish this kid would go have aspirations for the NFL." They just sort of become what they are. And so just supporting them, not letting them make excuses, not letting them be victims.
Yeah.
And, the culture of my family with my sisters, all of the kids are successful. My nieces and nephews are all successful. And my youngest said recently, because he had a friend ask him, like, "Dude, what do y'all do?" Like, because he can do a Rubik's Cube, he can do a backflip, he can do, he's teaching himself Spanish, he plays the guitar, and he's a pitcher. He said, "What is it with your family?" He goes, "You don't want to be the one that lets anyone else down. They're all successful, so we all want to have a good story to tell."
Yeah, that iron sharpens iron kind of thing. But dude, your kids, I was talking to Jack, and it was interesting because I'm trying to peg, and I said, "Jack, I think you're a lot like your dad." He said, "Oh yeah, Dad, I'm 100%." And it's just the way that they have this confidence. That's what I notice about your kids is they have a tremendous amount of confidence when they walk in a room. Their ability to communicate, whether it's with adults or whether it's with kids, it's like they're not, the room's never too big for them. So that's got to be instilled from you guys, where you've told them, "Hey."
Sometimes in parenting, you want your kids to have what you didn't have. And I grew up very shy. So part of being a photographer is I'm perfectly happy, quiet in the backgrounds. I didn't speak a lot until I was 13 or 14 years old. And so I wanted my kids independent thinking, be who you are, but don't be afraid to talk or to upset someone, and be who you are. And coming from Steve, it couldn't have been any other way, because we're a pretty competitive house. And so finding out who they are, letting them be that, and then I just think compassion goes a long way with listening and understanding and knowing that you're going to fall on your face. Mm-hmm. And just what do you do with that? One time Jack dropped a jar of my very expensive homemade yogurt onto the floor when he was very young, and it crashed to the floor. And I took a deep breath, and I said, "Let's clean it up." And he looked at me like, "Aren't you going to yell at me? Aren't you upset?" And I said, no, we made a mess. Let's get it cleaned up, get the spoon. And so it's like we had a problem, solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kids, that's what it seems like with them, is that no situation's too big for them. No situation's like too much of a big deal. It's probably because of the way you guys handled things. But just the competitive nature of them, the household had to be competitive too, I would imagine, huh? Because I know I was raised with four boys. We have killed each other all day long, and my mom kind of just let us do our thing unless there was a real chance of injury, which typically happened anyway.
There was form tackling. I learned early on. Like we do, because the youngest was 2 years younger than Jack, and from the time he was born in a bouncy seat, Jack would bring him a football and say, "Play, Rex, play." I'm like, he's got to learn to walk. Well, guess what? Rex learned to walk at 7 months because Jack was training him, and I used to tell him, he may be a better athlete than you because you have trained him all these years to be like you, and he may surpass you. But very competitive from a very and it's all of the kids. And then, of course, we're participating. I was an athlete. Steve's an athlete. So a lot of our activities were out at the field, playing, running, who can outdo each other. And, of course, Steve and I think we're the best athletes in the family. But
So the whole thing's
probably
competitive.
not true. Yeah.
Yeah, but, it looks like you guys didn't fall into this whole, all year round. Your kids took a little bit of a non-traditional route to get where they are. Jack, I think, didn't play football until his senior year or junior year, right? And then he was a lacrosse player. And Rex kind of came out for football his senior year, and then he just went back to pitching, and it looks like his path is in the pitching thing. So they took a pretty non-traditional, like you guys didn't have them out there and you got to be on these travel teams and this and this and this. You guys didn't look like y'all played that whole game, and you let your kids do what they wanted to do.
No, and Steve really drove that, especially with football, because Jack they played youth football. Mm-hmm. And then when we moved here from Texas, it just wasn't the team that they knew about or anything. They went to a school that didn't have tackle. So they played flag, but no, it wasn't ever you have to be on this team, you have to be seen, you have to get into this camp, you have to do all that. We didn't, we kind of let them drive that.
Yeah.
Because we did go through it with my daughter. In Texas, we did get sucked into the select soccer world, which for soccer, it's a different sport. You do need the skill. But we had Emmett Smith's daughter, my daughter competed against. Charles Haley's daughter, my daughter competed against. So high-level people all the time, super competitive.
Yeah.
And she burned out. By 7th grade, she was kind of done. So we learned, if your kid's going to be something, they're going to be be there to support them, but you can't make them something they're not.
Yeah, because the whole soccer and baseball thing. My brother's kids has 2 kids that, one plays in the AAA league in Portugal. So he put him on that path, and then he's got a young daughter who's 14, I think, that's really on a path to, she's like one of the top soccer players in the country for her age. And so, yeah, dude, it's such a commitment when you hone in on just one sport like that. And I noticed
if they continue to play for the love of the game, they can go as far as they want. Mm-hmm. When it becomes work or they have a coach that just beats them down mentally, it's really hard to compete at that level. So as long as they're still having fun, they can go as far as they want.
Yeah. So you're doing all this stuff as a hobby. You're working on with your kids. You're refining things, taking classes. When did you decide to take the jump and say, you know what, I'm going to actually go get a job maybe? And what did that path look like? So you had very passionate about it all throughout your kids. You're taking the photographs. You're learning things, and then you decide, all right, I'm at a phase now where let me go to the next step. So what did that look like?
People started asking me if I could take their family photos, and I was very good natural light. As I started studying, and the style that I liked was more studio-based, and so then I stopped and said, wait a minute, let me go back to school, so to speak, and learn.
So tell us a little bit some things that you learned. Like, what are some basic things that you learn? You jump into photography, you're learning. What's some of the key, like maybe the key pointers that maybe the audience could execute themselves to make their pictures better?
Telling your camera what to do. These cameras are so smart. We have the iPhones. Everybody can really take a great photo. When you hop into a professional, someone comes to you and says, I want you to create this. Then you have to backtrack. How was that lit? Because in a professional situation with an office, they don't have time for me to fumble. I have to walk in and be ready to go. And so when you're a hobbyist, you may or may not get the shot. When someone's paying you, you have to get the shot.
You have to, yeah.
And so that is such a passion of ours, is making it easier for the clients so that we can host offices of 10 or 15 people to come in and knock out the headshots in an hour and a half and have everybody leave laughing because they had a great time.
Exactly.
And so a lot of that goes into the pre-planning so that when you show up, everything's ready to go.
Okay.
But, so I wouldn't try something new like, hey, I've thought of this new lighting technique and let's try it today. I know you have to be somewhere in an hour. So it's kind of behind the scenes. There's a lot of work, and photography is difficult because there's so many different genres.
Right.
And it's hard to niche and decide what you're doing when you're learning. You want to do everything. So we started in real estate. With the what you learn doing sports, excuse me, is how to react quickly to a situation. Excuse me. Because the lighting can change from one side of the field to the other.
Yep.
So knowing your camera is the first thing. What is ISO? What is the shutter speed? and knowing these things so that you can think quickly.
And how did you learn this stuff from classes?
I learned from classes and then trial and error.
Yeah.
You know, trying something and going, wait a minute, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Oh, my shutter speed dropped too slow. Speed that back up. Oh, there we go. And so it's all about light, seeing the light, finding the light, or creating the light. And
So that's the key to a good picture.
yeah.
So from an iPhone standpoint, you know, because we have these great phones in our pocket that happen to have fantastic cameras, what are some of the tips and tricks just for like a novice photographer, things that they could do to improve their pictures?
Instead of standing straight onto the camera, look for angles,
Okay.
change the height of your camera. And there's some amazing photographers on Instagram who actually show you some different tricks. You know, instead of standing on a road like this, putting the camera down and trying a different angle. So maybe you get the mountain behind you. It's a 35 millimeter viewpoint, so you can go kind of wide. And so just change the angles.
That's one of the keys? Really?
Yeah, because we all do straight on.
What's that, Shannon?
Yeah, they do some pretty cool stuff where they take you standing and then say, wait a minute, don't stand like this. Kneel down, look off, hold your hat. You know, just bring a little personality.
Okay, so it's really the angles and the lighting.
Yeah.
Is
It is. And then your expressions, it's the biggest thing is sometimes, you know, in the old party pics days where you just kind of everyone's smiling at the camera, that's super easy to do. Up-leveling the photograph is it's an emotion. It's capturing either a really good laugh or a smile if that's your brand, but then teaching you how, you know, don't laugh and fall backwards because then you create a double chin. So I teach people to laugh towards the shoulder, so I can get you here, and forward. So we just always eliminate that double chin.
Back and,
right.
Yeah, because guys I think have that habit of, you know, it's like kind of like a tough thing where it's like,
yes.
dude, yeah.
So I have a pose called the "Come at me, bro."
Yeah,
it's very
like
technical.
Tuck your chin and
here and cut, you know, and that's sports. You're
come at me, bro.
So and then they'll say, Miss Paige, I can't come at you. I'm like, no, I don't mean, you know, come at me and stop.
Yeah, don't hit me.
So I always want you a little over your belt loop slightly so that you're here.
Okay.
Now, how your shoulders go is how the power of the picture. And so where the shoulders are tells so much. So if I want you powerful, I'm going to drop down a little bit, and then I do want you back a little bit.
Oh.
If I want you approachable, it's kind of more like, hey, how's it going? You know, if you want to get seductive, your shoulder comes in here.
So you're like a body language coach too.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think people, you know, it's really fascinating because I was invited to one of these mastermind things in Las Vegas by this guy named Brad Lee. He has a pretty cool podcast, but his whole business is he had a video business. He's got this huge, like huge studio with 30-foot ceilings, and they're like 30 by 30 rooms. And so you can come set up, you know, on site. And he's got multiple of these things. And he was, you know, we were talking at this conference, and he starts going in. He brought in a body language specialist, somebody that works for the government, and she literally went through the audience and like is picking everybody apart and saying, this is what's going. She was reading people's minds based on their body language, and it was so fascinating. So that really comes into play in pictures too,
It really
right?
does. There is a very famous headshot photographer named Peter Hurley in New York City.
Okay.
And he was a former model, and he works with a PhD, and they did a TED Talk on the psychology of why when that black camera comes up, people stiffen.
Why is that?
Versus control. When I have the camera here and I'm looking, I decide the angle. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. They got to trust me on the other side to make sure. So I have a few sayings in the studio. What happens here stays here. I'm going to ask you to do some things that may feel uncomfortable.
Right.
They don't get blasted. I don't put anything on social media. It's just I need you in a certain angle.
Yeah.
So leave all your self-confidence out in the parking lot.
Yeah, because it looks weird for a guy to be going.
It does, and it does. So I don't want you looking like that. And I always say, don't do this at a party. This only works here.
Right.
Your friends are going to go, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Yeah. And I tell executives, if I have you in the studio, I really want you, as you referred to Las Vegas. I used to go to a lot of conferences in Vegas back in the day when I was a sales rep, another career. And so we would have design conferences out there. And everybody after a round table discussion or something comes outside and they'll plop on the couches outside and they all kind of go, oh, almost like a smoke break.
Yeah.
So I'll say, I want you like that. Remember you sat down and someone comes over and goes, wow, can you believe, Debbie, they're predicting this about the industry? And you go, wow, yeah. That's how I want you.
Boom.
Boom. That's a real life scenario. And some people are like, you know, we do that in boudoir sessions.
Exactly.
Try to put you in a real life situation. You would do this normally, just with better posture.
So talk about boudoir sessions. What is that's always been fascinating because I've wanted to do that with Angelina, but it's just like, you know, boy, you gotta get real vulnerable.
And that's why with your wedding photographers, with any kind of photographer, you really have to trust them and know, because I have done boudoir for people who are prominent in the community. And so we're very private, and I won't even put their photos into a cloud for storage. They have to stay, you know, off the cloud.
That's a good idea.
Because you never know. And so it's almost like doctor-patient privilege. When you come in, what happens here literally lives and dies with us. Unless you say, because I have had clients say, oh, you can blast these all over. I don't, because I'm a mom, and I would just, you know. So our approach to it is very subtle and sensual over highly X-rated but I can see how much a man loves a woman through the photos I'm taking. It blows my mind. I will be literally tearing up. I'll have to go to the back and go, oh my God.
Really?
There's something that comes through, and I always say I would love the partner to be able to come in and do like an embrace and leave, because in that moment, if you saw your wife, you would just literally just like, wow. Because I had a husband say, my wife looked like an angel.
Holy moly!
I said, I know she did, and she loves you, and I can see how much you love her.
Most people like there's got to be a lot of fear and trepidation when that session starts. So take me inside that room when like some.
Yeah, we do.
Like what? Yeah, how many of them are yeah.
What happens in the studio stays in the studio, but yeah, we do carry White Claw, Prosecco. We have whatever's needed.
CBD.
Because that makes whatever is your jam. Bring it in, because once the studio door locks, the door is shut. It's your time. It's your space. And so whatever makes you comfortable is what we're going to do. It might be so subtle as a white sheet and just a white T-shirt.
Right.
And I call it waking up Saturday morning in the hotel. You were at a wedding Friday night. Y'all stayed up too late. It's, you know, the kids are with the babysitter, and it's just a natural, you know, you're sitting in the hotel room. The white sheet's kind of wrapped around and you're chatting. So that can be to someone like, that is the most beautiful way I see my wife. It's just that morning waking up. So,
has there been any weird moments?
Yes. Yeah, there are some strange things. Like people do bring in the inspiration photos, and you've seen them where there might be a lady on her torso, and she has a heel, and it's pulling up one of her undergarments.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful shot. But what I didn't realize is this person was young. They're not flexible enough to do it.
Oh.
And so here we are. It's this awkward thing. And she's like, I can't do it. Yeah. Like, let's change gears here. We call it pivoting. Let's do something else.
So what do you do? Especially if you don't know the people. It's like, holy crap. Like
sometimes, and I always say I shoot to your taste. And so someone like may stay, like they'll bring in a husband's like suit jacket and kind of be in, you know, it's cute. Yeah. And then some people, it just, whoop, it's gone. And you go,
we're like,
well, okay.
We weren't there yet.
I didn't know this was coming, but here we are. We're going with it.
So what do you do? It's like got to be like, holy shit. All right, Nikki, what do we do now?
We just go. We just run with it.
You just stay in motion.
Stay in motion and just run with it. And then they see them and they're like, yes, this is what I wanted. And if that's how you wanted to see yourself, then that's how we're going to photograph you. Google keeps sending me emails, and it says, would you like to add this to your listing? And you're this friendly, and this person friendly, and this person friendly. And I always say, Google, you need heartbeat friendly. If you have a heartbeat, I'll photograph you. And I will ask every person, how do you want to be photographed? And it might be, yes, I own a company, but I want to see myself, because people invest a lot of millions of dollars to come do business with me. Mm-hmm. I want to be approachable, but professional. You know, somebody may say, there's a sensual side to my brand. I do have to be maybe a little cleavage is showing, or maybe it is a little bit more fitted clothing.
Like if you were Dr. Birkenstock or something,
Yes.
plastic surgery,
Yes,
that kind
you
of
might
stuff.
be highlighting more of the form, but that is all the consultation, and we start every session with. And it might be frustrating because some people want to call and they say, hey, I just need a headshot. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Many, many times we've started with, I need a headshot, and it turns into, wait a minute, I can do this photo. It's like, hey, you're getting your makeup done. Invest a little bit and create some more stories about yourself for your business so you can promote yourself.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because the obvious things to use photos are headshots and those things. What are some other ways that businesses can think about integrating, these kind of, photos, like whether it's lifestyle photos, the way you can really, show the people that you're asking to do business with you, the personality of your company, they can shine through some of these things. So what are some innovative things, or maybe some things that people, some strategies that businesses could use with their photographs besides the obvious stuff?
Showing a little bit more of the body is a start.
Okay.
So that people can see like how you stand. Like if I were to walk into your office, I'd be like, oh yeah, I saw you. Showing you interacting with your clients. Showing your actual place of business if it's something that you do highlight in your advertising. And showing how it's easy to do business with you. And it may be that you are your brand. It may be that your team's part of your brand. And so it's all pulling that in together to make you more accessible to your viewer, because I know you've seen the statistics. It's like you have 3 seconds or something when somebody hits your website to click on and keep learning more, or click off and find someone else.
So the more you can humanize yourself as a business, the more they can kind of jump into your shoes and get a vibe of who you are, what you do, how you move,
Yes.
those kind of things.
That's it.
Yeah. What about product shots? Do you do, I know photographing people, but then also there's this whole other thing of people's products or food, those kind of things,
Again, how do you want it photographed? Is it going to be on an Amazon listing where you just have a plain white background, which we can do? We specialize in people because I just love people, but products are easy because they never say, can you make me look skinnier?
So what's the key? So on a product standpoint, you would get the product from the customer and create the setting for that, and then it's just a more controlled setting and just highlight the food.
Yes. How do we want to do it? I notice you guys have a lot of texture in your office. You might want to incorporate a little bit of wood or something into it. Creating vignettes, if you sell jewelry. Do you want to highlight clients? Are you going to show a woman from here showcasing a necklace? Again, what's the story? And so, yeah, we can do white, cut it out, make it perfect for like a catalog look, or do a lifestyle shoot where you're either shopping for the piece, they're putting it on, maybe it's somebody getting dressed, So yeah, it all goes into your brand strategy and how you go about going to market with your product.
So if I came to you and said, you just did headshots, which by the way came out fantastic, but then let's just say we said, hey, events, we're running all these events, how important it is. I'm sure those photographs are extreme. What are some other things that maybe we haven't thought about yet on how we can use photographs to benefit? I don't know if there might be no other things, but are there other ways that a business can look at photography outside of just the obvious things, right? Are we missing something in how we can leverage this tool and a great photographer and great shots in a way that maybe not a lot of people have thought about before?
Sometimes like for your website, we like to do banner shots. And so you can take pieces and parts of your team. So I can cut you out since we all did the same color and maybe pull you back together. And then you can use that as an advertising piece and have text over to the side.
Okay.
And things like that. So using more of a graphic design element to take pieces of the photos that you have to create things like banner pages for your website, or if you do an email marketing campaign, not just seeing that one photo as a static photo, this is just it. And so we've started doing something also with group photos. Instead of taking the group together, taking them individually and pulling them together that you can get so if you have the kind of cut path image of you can put it in anything. So just creating, and then not being afraid to showcase who you are, the different personalities. We had a client who came in and she needed 2 years worth of content. Well, she's getting 3 years now but the silly photo, she was like, where would I use that? Her laughing, her grabbing her knee, like leaning forward. Well, she goes to tell a story because she does do a podcast and then she does some other things that I just happened to get the photo, but it tells a story, so she uses it. So having a photo that's a little bit more than just, hey, here's me, showing you laughing, showing you in a different position, knowing that this can be a story for Instagram later. So I have a picture of her doing this. And she does sometimes have to lecture her clients, like, hey, remember I told you? And so just having a photo that matches the stories that you're going to try to tell.
Oh, that's
Is there
neat.
anything you've noticed that I'm leaving out with?
Nope, you're covering it all.
Okay.
You're covering it all.
So how long? So what is a typical session? You know, if you're out there, your business, what is your customer, typical customer look like? Is it schools all the way to businesses? Like, is it just literally anything you can think of?
Mostly, we seem to be speaking to small business, small to medium, and bloggers, people who have written cookbooks, creating content for the cookbook, or creating, they're going to be going on a tour, on a book tour, just having something different that the store might put out on their social media, like, hey, we have so-and-so coming,
Yep.
and here's a different photo than what she would, normally have.
Okay. And what's to come? What's coming? What's next for you?
Well, we're going to be really niching down on this business. We love our portraits, and so it'll always be a thing. But
And dance.
and dance.
Yeah.
Dance is a passion, and maybe it's because it was some regret of not realizing how much I loved it as a child, and so I played soccer, and I used to kind of dance as a soccer player. But now that I'm like, well, all the girls used to make fun of me, like, you're just too feminine, you're too, and so I got made fun of a little bit for.
You did?
I did, yeah.
And what's wrong with these kids?
Because soccer players are tough, and I didn't appear tough. I was more like a gazelle. I was long and fast, and
Yeah.
but it probably would have been as comfortable on stage dancing. But backing up a little bit, I grew up in Indonesia. I spent 3 years in New Guinea.
Wow.
And so in the mountains of New Guinea, there were no ballet schools, there were no jazz schools. There was soccer on gravel streets. So that's what we did.
And what, you were a military family?
My dad worked for Freeport-McMoRan. They had a copper mine in the mountains in New Guinea. They had sulfur here in New Orleans. And so, they sent us over in 1976. We didn't have DirecTV. We didn't have satellites. We didn't have phones. And so we played outside. We had rivers. We had waterfalls. We hiked. There were native people that had, the indigenous people.
That sounds fascinating.
It was fast. That's a whole other story.
And how old were you?
I was 8 when we went.
Wow.
And 11. And that goes back to the stories, because my dad had a camera. We have thousands of photos. Jakarta, Indonesia. Bali in Indonesia.
I've been to Bali. Yeah.
Yeah,
The rice fields and
and Thailand, and the people. And you learn, even with the indigenous people we lived around, we didn't speak their language. They didn't speak our language. But we found a way to communicate. We brought them food. They brought us art. And we would play together. You communicated through the eyes. And that's why I'm so passionate with the human face, because all over the world, no matter what, demographics, color, skin, where you're from, once you're eye contact to eye contact, you're people.
why is that, you think? What is it about the eyes in photographs that are just
Because you connect and you can see who someone is.
into their soul?
And you know how it is. You pass somebody and they may just look at you and keep going. And then there's other times where you meet someone, it's like, wow, do I know you?
Yeah.
And so it happened a lot over there. So you're getting the native people were very simple. They dressed in grass skirts. They had no material possessions.
So where'd you go to school?
Over there, they had an international school.
International school.
They brought an international school in.
So was it like it didn't look like a typical city. It's like what, dirt roads?
Oh yeah, we had a river that ran through, and it was almost like a camp.
Wow.
And but we had friends from all over the world, and you had to immediately get to know each other's culture. We had friends from Norway. We had friends from just all over the world, and we were just kids, so we just wanted to play. And so it was a quick study in learning, like not prejudging people, because we were all kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating.
And so you were 10 or 11. When did you make it back down to Slidell? Because I know you wound up in Slidell, and then you wound up in Dallas.
1981-ish, 1980. Oh, I think we moved back in 79.
79 to Slidell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then just had to
You went to Slidell High?
I did go to Slidell High for 1 year.
Okay.
And funny story, but we were the first women's soccer team that year to win a state championship in the state of Louisiana. It was the first year, my freshman year, that they had soccer for women.
Come on.
And Slidell High won the state.
And you were on the team?
I was on the team.
Holy moly.
So, yeah, so that was, I didn't even realize that till a few years ago. So, wait a minute. There was
You in the
women's
record-
soccer.
Yeah, you in the record books.
Yeah, we were the first women's team. But yes, we moved back to Slidell. So talk about culture shock. I mean, I'm used to traveling to other countries every few months. We were back and forth to Australia every 6 weeks, and then it was Slidell, Louisiana. And so it was culture shock. It was different. We were, we had to reacclimate for living in the United States again. But yeah, so we stayed there through high school.
And when did you meet Steve?
In high school.
In high school.
In high school, yes. I met him. I took the photograph of him in the bus for the JV football team, and then I had a math class with him, and he was poorly behaved. So he used to entertain me the whole class.
So you guys dated in high school,
yes.
But then he wasn't approved, huh? He wasn't on the approved list.
He didn't make the approved list, and he was a little wild. So as we got back together as adults, then you're like, oh my gosh, you've grown up. And so he's been a great dad, great husband, so much fun to be around. And so, our house was just very unique because as a friend of ours in Colorado described Steve, she said, Paige, it must be so interesting being married to a cartoon character. I said, yes, that's one way to look at it.
That's a good way to describe him, dude. He's got his own little vibe, his own dress. You look at the way he dresses, it's like, man, this guy, he's beaten to his own drummer.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's true.
So you guys get over here. I think you met Steve. You guys dated. Then he went off his way, and you went off your way, and then you guys met back at the Abita, Abita, right?
At Abita, yes. He was playing golf with friends. I was having dinner with my family, and I saw him from probably half a mile away. I knew the walk.
Yeah.
And so, boom, that was like, now we reconnected as adults.
Okay.
And so then it was just whirlwind, and, I think that was 97.
97. And it's been just a hell of a ride since then. Huh?
Yep. So now we're learning how to be empty nesters, but with kids playing college sports. Going to be traveling a lot this year.
A ton, right? Yeah. Because Jack opens up against Nebraska when in, is it August?
August 31st.
August 31st.
Yep.
So Paige's second oldest son, Jack, just signed with Power 5, University of Minnesota. So we got some Minnesota Golden Gopher up there with PJ Fleck this year.
That's right, we do.
He's an impressive guy, huh?
Look, Steve and I tried to get ourselves recruited as well. We were so impressed with the program just to be around the quality of people because football is a thing, but it's all about different aspects of your life, becoming a man. They teach you about investing. They teach you how to handle the media. They treat you like you're going to the NFL. And he said, if you're not ready for the NFL, this might not be the program for you. Wow. That's what we're going for. And then just the amazing things that they do. PJ heard about a local family here that visits the Ronald McDonald House every year with their son. Mandeville High student, like from right here, but they go every year. And his wife looked at me and she goes, I'm on the board at Ronald McDonald House. I bet I know them. And she says, wait a minute, why don't we do something next summer with the football team with Braden? I said, hold on. Sent him a message. And so this summer, when they come in, we'll do something. So they are much more than football.
Wow. And the facilities?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Like I said, we wanted to get recruited because you've got pods, the different red light therapy, the blue light therapy, the saltwater floats, a napping pod, a personalized workout plan where they've scanned your body and can determine where you could hold more muscle. And then the people that support you. And so everything kind of had a recipe from the way that they train the safeties to tackle. They had 3 specific things. In this situation, we do this. And then the safeties coach would show us a drill they do in practice, and then he would show us 10 clips from a game of how that drill translated into a game. So if you're going to be, to me, I'm all about the fundamentals and mastering your craft.
Yeah.
If you're going to, it's highly disciplined and it's impressive.
Yeah, I saw PJ Fleck, I think, right when he took the Minnesota job, and they had like one of these little specials on him before. I think they had game day maybe at their place, and they highlighted him. And just an impressive man in his approach with the the young men and how he's raising these young men. You know,
Yeah.
it just look like it's somebody that you would feel very comfortable saying, "Hey, my kid's probably going to come back better than I left him."
That's exactly. And he looked at us and made that promise. He said, I know how hard it would be for me to have my kid going off. So we have him. And
That's great news. Because listen, these coaches can be. I played at Tulane, and I don't think I had. One of my coaches wasn't a PJ Fleck kind of guy. And it makes a big difference.
absolutely.
Especially in today's world where the world has gone so me. That's kind of, I think it's one of the problems that we face when we go out in society in some cases, that it's gone too far about the individual and not about the collective. But those, Fleck and those guys are making sure that they're building that into these young men, the leaders of tomorrow. It's good to see guys like PJ Fleck out there, just because you can tell it's much more. Football is just is the mechanism that he's reaching these kids to.
That's it.
To help them.
That's exactly it. And it's impressive to watch because they speak the same language from PJ down to the guys who are working in the uniform room. They all speak the same language, and they're all equally as amazing.
Yeah. I could tell because Jack he's got to get there. I got to get to work. I got to put the time. If I do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. Speaking of that, so what hurdles have you faced? So you 50 years old, you decide, hey, I'm gonna go hang this shame. That had to be a nerve-wracking moment. It's like, because now it's like it's on you. It's not, you're not working for somebody else. You're not getting a paycheck from somebody else. It's like, here's my thing now. Walk me through like the decision that you made, and then what are some of the challenges that you've faced growing your business, or some of the things that have surprised you about how you've been able to grow it? Because that's always a question for people. Okay, I want to go do this. How am I going to get customers? How am I going to get clients? How am I going to handle all these components that come with the business? Because there's accounting, there's licensing, there's permits, there's all of these different things. It becomes overwhelming for people. So, did you have kind of like just a checklist that you put in play? And what are some things that maybe you didn't expect?
There are mentors out there for photographers who are teaching you the business of it, because it is hard to monetize something that you would probably do for free, and it's easy when you're free, because then you don't have any expectations of, well, I didn't get the shot, so, oh, well, the pressure's on you. And yes, you being creative, you have to think taxes, and you have to think marketing, you have to think in structures that may not be natural to your brain. So yeah, the sleepless nights, staying up, feeling called to do it, because I do see a higher value in showing somebody like, hey, maybe your nose isn't perfect, and maybe you weren't somebody that would be chosen for the cover of Vogue, but you're still very valuable. Mm-hmm. And so stop looking at yourself as what you're not, and let's look at what you are.
That's great. That's awesome.
And it's hard to put into a marketing, because people probably won't believe you if you tell them you're going to feel different after this. It's when they experience it. Mm-hmm. And photographing the dancers was really where it started for me a lot, because these dancers came in and they're so confident on the stage, but in front of the camera. And then at the end, one of the girls turned and she goes, "That was fun." And I said, yes, it's fun. So yes, it can be transformative. But in the day that it's a highly competitive market, because everybody has now an avenue. They have an iPhone. They can get a DSLR or a mirrorless camera cheap and do really cool stuff. So differentiating yourself does become very different, or very difficult, I should say, because, and then the pricing kind of up and down all over the place with what people charge. So it is challenging, and I do follow some podcasts with some very prominent photographers, and they had one that said, "What would you do if you were starting today?" And she said, "I don't know if I would do this if I was starting today." It's just
because it's really difficult to turn into a business.
Yeah, because it's something easy. So what we look at is more, you're not hiring us to take a picture. We're with you from the beginning of planning, helping you see what it is that you would, instead of taking 400 photos, we've pre-planned. We know what we're looking for. It might take us 5 shots. Mm-hmm. And that's so much easier for you. Or if you're photographing a family, to say, we're creating that one iconic shot for over the fireplace. Yeah. Your family can come in and we could be done in less than 30 minutes. How happy is your husband?
Look at what we just did. We kind of had a game plan. We came in, and that was so fast and painless. Like we were in and out like almost in less than 30 minutes probably. you
Yeah.
know?
It was, y'all were impressive, and you have such an impressive group. Anyway, capturing their personality was the whole thing. Was like, you know,
We look like the mob.
I know.
I look like the mob boss.
Oh, you kind of come across like that, man. You got the jacket.
It was a great session.
It was.
It was. Everybody
Really
had so
nice.
much fun here. That's what's really fascinating to me is how much fun people had when you pulled that couch out and they started
Right.
bouncing
Yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
couch and taking those. That's to me,
The
man.
boudoir, because that is a thing. 'Cause you asked about the boudoir, and I did have. We don't get a lot of it, but there is such thing as boudoir, where guys come in and they either may like, hey, I work out all the time. I want some good photos of myself, or as kind of a fun thing for the wife. Like I think it'd be cute, you know, to just as a gift for my wife. So we do have that sometimes. But you asked about when you're starting the business, they say you find out what you're made of. And so you do. You find out your weaknesses, where you're like, you know, what am I doing? What was I thinking doing this? I used to run ultramarathons. That's another side story. So when you run a 50-mile race, you find out what you're made of. And sometimes you really like it. And other things you go, I don't like this about myself. Mm-hmm. And so I need to change. So you're literally turning yourself inside out, exposing everything. And then
on purpose.
On purpose. Like I asked to do this. I could have.
We talk about this kind of stuff all the time, Shannon and I, on our podcast, is that you got to take yourself into those dark places to remember what you're all about, to remember that you still have it. That you can't do it from up here. You have to get down there and experience that just grit, and you know there's no other way around it. Goggins' new book, never finished. That's what it's all about. Is he thought he had made, you know, he's like the premier ultra athlete in the world. This Navy SEAL did, you know, made it through BUD/S twice, and he found himself rich and famous but empty, because he realized that this rich kind of famous lifestyle does not include a major component of what made him who he is today, which is it not being like that. Right. And how do you go and reanimate that feeling and get yourself back into that place, because that's where the growth happens. And you know, and so his book, Never Finished, was just fascinated, because I've always said, Sean, when do you stop? You don't stop until you're in the grave, just because when you do stop, that's when your days are numbered to go to the grave.
Absolutely. I truly believe that. And my daughter was on a soccer team. Dallas, Texas soccer, extremely competitive. They were doing 2-a-days in the 5th grade. They were all running sub 5-minute miles in the 5th grade. And we used to have to fight. Her team was, say, number 10 out of 10 in the league. But to stay in that league was always a fight. And we enjoyed that season of fighting so much, because everything was gritty and digging, and how can we get through this? And this other team is so much better. And she got recruited to go to the number 1 team. And it just wasn't as fun. They won all the time. The demands were so high, but it wasn't like you were fighting for something. It was like you're fighting for a spot because there's 10 people that want your spot. And it just wasn't as fun as the team that was not quite as good, but had to fight for everything they got.
Isn't that the way it?
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't think people realize that, and they look at the pain and the struggle as something other than what it is. And what it is that's the magic in all of this, dude, is that you know you're in the fight. How do you know you're in the fight unless there's pain and struggle sometimes?
Right.
So that's, to me, is the litmus test. Are you fighting the good fight, or are you not? Are you experiencing pain? No. Well, then guess what? You're not living everything that you can be, because if you were, you'd be bumping up against these kind of hurdles and heartaches all the time. We measured almost daily. I'm trying to bump into these things daily, just because it becomes the governor of you're on the right path. As soon as there's too many days in a row that wake up with sunshine, dude, you're not doing something right, because you should be creating this uncomfortable nature for yourself. It means you're pushing. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It means you're pushing. You're in the right place. But I don't know why it's hard to grasp that really simple concept that if get yourself past what's comfortable, and there's good going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Thinking.
That's what did they say? Life begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
At the end, boy, that's so true. Yeah. It's
true. And that's why people used to say, why do you run the ultra marathons? And I'm like, well, because I need a challenge. I don't work. I don't get bonuses from, you know, my daughter made straight A's this year. I don't get hey, you get a bonus this year. So I needed something that drove, that not everyone did, but that prove to myself that I can set a task, set a goal, and achieve it. And it grew from there. I was training for a 100-mile race, but never made it because I got injured in a soccer game. So that dream died. But the moments of digging and you're in pain and your hip flexion, you can't move. During one of my 50-mile races, I couldn't walk, much less run. I got hurt at mile 17, but I had 33 miles to go. And it's not pretty.
Right.
I got through. I crawled. I walked backwards. I laid down. I cried. I did anything I could. And then around one of the curves was a guy with homemade peach schnapps. And I went, oh, I can make it a little further. And so it's just like taking the pain, keep going. And then all of a sudden you see something, you go, wow, that was worthwhile. Somebody had a Coors Light. So when you've been running for 10 hours, you're like, you've lost your mind a little bit. But, I had a goal of 10 hours. I got hurt, finished in 11 hours and 53 minutes. And you don't forget any one of those minutes.
Right.
Because all I was getting was a belt buckle at the end.
So it was just you pushing yourself mentally to see what's on the other side of this dark place. And I would imagine, as Goggins describes it, that you get he did I think the 250-mile race is the one that he did. He said, man, you get into some really dark places when you're out there, man, and your mind will take you in some bad spots, dude, that you got to go figure out. You do. You see what you're made of, and you're like, wow, you can avoid it and say, no, that wasn't me. I wasn't complaining the whole time. I complained the whole 33 miles and had a friend helping me run, literally dragged me by my hair to the end, but I did it. And so I found out, like, I may complain a little along the way, but I'll carry you on my back and keep going. And so at least I have that. And so I got to work on the complaining thing. Because it's hard sometimes to enjoy the ride that you're on because it seems bumpy and it seems rough, and how am I going to get through this? But all of a sudden you come around the corner and there's something there and you go, wow, I didn't know that was going to be there. So then you go, wow, if I hadn't taken that trek, I wouldn't have gotten there and I would have missed out. So. Yeah. I tell people this. We actually had a call last night with a prospective client, and we talked about, when you first start marketing and advertising, there's no way around the testing phase, right? You can't cheat it. You can't shortcut it. You have to walk through that, and it could be painful for a couple of months because you're trying to figure it out. But there's only one way to get to the other side. So if you want to go from where you are now, a business, they're at an inflection point. They have to go to the next step. The only way to do it is there's going to be some pain, and I think that's in life in general. When you resolve yourself to the fact that getting to the next thing, who knows what's going to happen, what's going to be thrown at me, but if you just focused on that end point, I think it just changes everything. It allows you to carry on. Sometimes you got to take a deep breath. Probably during this journey that you had, there were times that you took a deep breath and said, let me table this and let me think about it a little more. And there were times that you dug in, and it was kind of an ebb and flow until one day you woke up and said, shit, here we are, I'm going to do it.
At this point, it's all I know how to do. And I am a person that will set myself into a situation. I may not know everything, but I'll embrace it and go, wow, we're going to grow from here. Let's do this. So
I think that's a great way to look at things. So do we have anything that we haven't covered yet that you think
Sean,
we said, Shannon?
I love talking, so you're going to have to cut me off.
Yeah, do you think there's other things that we should cover?
I would want to say that people who have trepidation and fear about being photographed and such, that Bellus through Paige is just like a stellar opportunity for, you could say transformation, but you could just say to capture your personality and to, like, when you come in and you're so uptight and you're in the headlights in that first frame, and then when we go through all the pictures that have been taken, and usually it's not a bunch because Paige is very intentional. And me on the side, I can see behind her with the camera, I can see when the moment's coming, and she captures it.
Wow.
And that's like pure gold to be part of that. And then to cull through the pictures that have been captured, and to go from that first deer in the headlights, maybe don't even start looking at that, go to the end and go backwards. Because by the end, we're almost done, and you kind of like go, and then she captures a few more pictures, and that's, again, back to the gold.
Wow.
So I would say that working with Paige has just been an exercise and an experience in how to relax and enjoy what oftentimes it can be just, again, that fear-inducing,
a pressure cooker. That's exactly
lack
it.
of control. But she kind of gives you that through just how she guides you. Like, if you're worried about poses, don't worry. She's going to kind of like guide you and comment and carry you through. And sometimes demonstrate. And that's fun to see in our little reels and stuff is, how she just takes a person from uptight, first walk in the door, put the purse down, to just wait, we're done. And like one of the clients was like, I didn't know I was a model,
Right.
And so it's an attitude change. And then to see the pictures on their websites and know that a newcomer to the website is going to be like personality burst,
Yes.
So it's fabulous working with Paige. So
It doesn't get old. It really doesn't.
It doesn't. And each new person who walks in the door is just, you see their growth and you see their potential.
You guys are bringing joy to people.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
our
we do.
team,
We do.
our developers like Iraj and those guys,
Oh.
man, I can't tell you, dude. Just it made me overjoyed with happiness to see how happy they
That
were about
is
this.
what
dude.
it's all about.
Oh
And
my
Annie
goodness.
Leibovitz, who's a very famous photographer, Vanity Fair, she's the photographer probably of our century. She said, something that you see in my photos is that I'm not afraid to fall in love with my subjects.
Right.
And it sounds a little weird, but it is so
But we
true. We
do.
absolutely fall in love
Yeah.
with the people we photograph.
Well, you see, people get so excited, especially people that everybody thinks it's like, oh, I take terrible pictures. But then they see one that you capture, it's like, shit, I even look good in this one.
Well-
How did these people do this?
It's like, dude, that's really how you look. I mean, you see yourself different, but that's how you look. I didn't do anything. I'm not
everybody
facial.
that comes on this thing, they're petrified, huh, Shannon, of the camera.
Yes.
They're absolutely petrified of the camera. This is
Good.
one more thing I wanted to touch with you. I know you're a woman. You seem so chill, and when you go in your studio, you're so like laid back, and you have this calming presence. And I think, where does that come from? It seems like you're got to be from your faith.
Probably
Yes.
a little bit. And, like they say, the duck, be calm on the top. And so like under the water, I'm like 100 miles an hour, but I just don't have the gift of a loud voice or a booming presence. And so I seem very calm, but I'm really high strung.
So when we're a nervous wreck, you're a nervous wreck too?
Yeah,
Oh, geez, and thank goodness you don't show it.
I know. Luckily,
You and Nikki make y'all seem like y'all got it all under control.
because if you're worried about yourself, once you turn your focus back to another person, it goes away. And so, yes, one of my children before his games used to say, "Mom, I'm so nervous," and I'd say, "It's because you care. You're so into the outcome of this."
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
we kind of go in with that perfectionist moment, and we're like, did we prepare enough? Did we pull this together? Did we
Right.
talk enough? Did we prepare them enough? And then we just go, okay,
Once
scratch
they
all
walk
that.
in,
Scratch all that.
it's
Hello,
game
welcome to
time.
Bellus.
game
Boom!
time.
It's all about you.
Absolutely.
And so yes, behind the scenes, should we do the white? Should we do the back? Should I do?
Right.
Wait, I got this new light. All of that, and then the person comes through. Bam! It's over. Hi, how are you? And then we're all about you. And so that is innate in both of us, in that we are all about the person in front of us. And so I call myself an ego-free photographer. I do like it when someone says, "Oh, look, I had this photo done," but at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with me. It's all
Okay.
about the client.
Yeah. So just before we step away, let's give the audience one. If they're thinking about taking a family picture, do you go solid clothes, stripes? What is like in your mind? If you're going to go do it, what is the best way to get the best outcome?
I love Vanity Fair style where you're dressed up. I say, let's dress like the Kardashians. Let's not act like that.
Right.
But, they always have an air about them in their photos.
Yeah.
So I like a regal style.
Okay.
But I also really love action, too. And something we're going to start is incorporating more of the kids' personalities. So we want you to know, if you're coming in, we know what we're creating first. Do you want an album? Do you want artwork for your wall? Do you just want some few things for social media? What are you looking to, so that we can price you accordingly? We have luxury products. We have things that we have made in Italy, handmade leathers. It's just really what is going to fit the aesthetic of your home. but catching action shots of kids, because that's the memory that you have, is like, oh my God, that is so my kid when they were 3. Yeah. Instead of trying to get them to be something that you've perceived should be the family photo. It's like, your kid is like this. Let's capture them as they are.
As they are.
So your family portrait sort of turns into
Birthday
an
parties,
action
kids'
portrait.
birthday
Yeah. Right, yeah. So I
But
love
it's
a
all
white
about
background.
personality.
And I do follow a photographer who has, this is her style. But it's all, if your 3-year-old dresses in a tutu everywhere they go, let's photograph them in their tutu with their unmatching shoes and their disheveled hair.
Because that's what they're going to remember.
What they were.
That's who they were.
Embrace it and make it a focal point, and not something you're trying to not hide about them, but not portray about them. It's like,
well, and I had a client, we both know, who we had done senior portraits, and at the end we started talking about wall art or albums, or how do you want these photos to live? And she went, none of these photos, I love them, but they don't match my house. And I was like, okay, let's rethink this. It's great to have something for Facebook. Oh, look, these are great pictures. But what is this picture might hang on your wall for the next 30 years?
Exactly.
So we're not quantity. We're not we can, if you just came to us and said, we just want 300 photos. But what I have noticed in now 28 years of parenting is it becomes digital clutter. Yep. You don't really remember. It seems like you want all the photos, but really it's 1 or 2 or 3 that are on your wall, because after 40 years, you go, what am I going to do with all these photos?
Exactly. I like the way you did it with us, man. Like, hey, here's these top few. Let's narrow it down.
Narrow it down here.
So it's perfect.
So,
well, how do people get in touch with you if they want to reach you on social media, on your website? Which all the different ways?
So our website is bellus.photography. It's a domain.
So BELLUS dot photography.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have contact forms on there. We have our social media feeds. We're Bellus, a photography boutique, on Facebook and Instagram.
Bellus, a photography boutique. And Facebook and Instagram. Well, ladies, thank you all for coming by today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great pics and family pics. I appreciate it. And
look, I love my humble clients, but Angelina is probably, there's a photo of her in my studio, and it's kind of the standard. When people walk by, they go, I want to look like that.
Oh, wow, that's so sweet.
If you met her in person, she's so humble, and I try to tell her how pretty she is, and she just looks at me and giggles. And I don't care.
Basically, it's one example of a magazine style photo shoot.
Yeah, she's literally
go from everyday self, who's beautiful, to just magazine style that everyone comes in and says, take that kind of picture of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad. Yep. Shit,
it's awesome.
That woman looked good in those pictures, boy.
She always looks good.
Yeah.
Your
Put
whole
a smile on my
team.
face.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having us. Y'all are amazing. I'm happy to know you, and it's been a blessing for us. Getting to know your team is just incredible.
Well,